All right, we're back. DFS Rebels. Dante, you here with me?
Of course, I am Mr. Rob, ready for another successful week. Week five.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's dig right in. We don't waste time here. Gonna start off with quarterbacks. I don't like quarterbacks this week. There's not like everyone has a good reason to be played, but I'm just gonna stick to four. Just four guys. Gonna start right off the bat with Patrick Mahomes. Why wouldn't you? Right? I think that whole game, because I also like Kirk Cousins. I think there's gonna be a lot of throwing. I think it's gonna be high scoring. I think Patrick Mahomes has not had that high ceiling yet. Um, and if I think it was Justin Herbert, it was around he had like 80% accuracy or something against that Minnesota defense. So I don't see why Mahomes is not going to have just as much success or more. So I'm all over Mahomes. I also, just like I said, I like Cousins against the game script that he should be behind. And even if he's not behind, Cousins just throws it. He just loves throwing that ball. And yes, there's always the chance there's some interceptions in there, but he's gonna throw it. It's gonna be it's gonna be awesome to watch him. He's always a great fantasy producer. And then obviously the more punt plays, the more GPP plays, Zach Wilson against the Broncos defense has not been good, but the Broncos are getting some of their defensive guys back. So maybe it's not the best play, but Wilson I thought looked really good against the Chiefs. If if he can keep that kind of play up, I think he's gonna be fantastic. He's also low owned. And I'm jumping on the Dobbs wagon. Dobbs has been a fantasy great this year. I don't see why he can't stay consistent with that. He's cheap. He's low owned. I'm on the Dobbs. Well, what quarterbacks you like?
So you got obviously a lot of the better plays out of the way. Zach Wilson play is a good one, underrated one for sure. Maybe not as underrated only because the way he looked last week against the Chiefs. But I do think he continues that this weekend against, yeah, the Broncos defense should be getting better now that they're getting healthier, but they're still not going to be great. Zach Wilson played probably his best game, or definitely one of his better games in his NFL career so far last week. So I think Zach Wilson continues that. I think he looks good again tomorrow. So I do like Zach Wilson start, especially since he's cheap. But I'll tell you what, though, my two favorite quarterbacks on this slate, or at least two of my favorite guys, are you didn't mention any of them. I'm rolling with the two rookies, Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud. I like them both a lot for different reasons, obviously. Richardson because he's mobile. The Titans defense is good against the run, but that's mostly against running backs. Yes, Jonathan Taylor is back, but they're not going to run with him that much because it's the first game back, pretty much his first week of NFL action since last December or whatever it is. So they're not going to run with him a whole lot. So I think Richardson will still get his fair share of carries. Plus, the Titans defense isn't very strong against the pass. I know they looked great against Burrow last week, but that's because the Burrow and the whole Bengals offense have been struggling. So I do like Richardson tomorrow, and I do like CJ Stroud a lot tomorrow, only because of the way they've been throwing it, the way he's looked so far. There's really no reason to not start him, especially because he's still one of the cheaper quarterbacks on the slate. Yeah, maybe his ownership be up a little bit because the way he looked, but still, he it's going to help you save money in your lineup. So I do like Stroud a lot, especially against the Falcons defense. The Falcons pass defense is overrated. They do have talent there. They got AJ Terrell. They got Jesse Bates. The Falcon defense is supposed to be better on paper, but they really haven't looked as good as everybody, claims they have. They really only looked strong against, I think it was the Panthers week one, because going back in their schedule too, week two they didn't look very good against or actually no, week two they looked okay against the Packers too. But also because the Packers are missing two of their top weapons. They didn't look very good against the Lions, and then they didn't look very good last week against the Jags in London. So for me, the Falcons pass defense is a little overrated. That's why I'm on Stroud. But yeah, enough of that. Those are my two quarterbacks, along with Zach Wilson. And maybe, just maybe, you could try Burrow, and that's only because he's cheaper. He's going to be low on because he struggled. I mean, rightfully so. But he's playing against the worst defense he's played all year so far. And I also saw reports that Joe Burrow's feeling his best all season long. So that Bengals offense will eventually get better, and I think it starts tomorrow. So that's just going to be cheap or low on plays. Crazy they were saying this about Burrow, but that's just to go different because obviously not a lot of people are going to be on them. So just keep that in mind as a potential option.
All right, I like that. I like that. Moving on to receivers. I have a few receivers to name, but the number one pick, my number one that I'm gonna have in like 90% of my lineups is going to be AJ Brown. Um, I am all over him this week. He's coming into this year as a man coverage monster. And the Rams like to play a lot of man coverage. They also like to play a lot of cover three and cover four. Now let me read you the stats, the 2022 stats of AJ Brown against man coverage. He was number one in targets, number one in receiving yards, and number one in receiving touchdowns against man coverage. Now in 2023, this year, because AJ Brown was a little iffy against the coverages, but now this year he's actually second in targets against cover two and three. He's tied for second in receptions. He's fifth in receiving yards, and he's tied for seconds in touchdowns per game against the coverages. So he's been eating both coverage three, coverage four, and man coverage, and now he's going up against a team that runs those schemes. There's no reason not to lock him in, especially in cash. Um, all over him on most of my lineups. You can never do 100%. You never do that, but he's gonna be at least 90, 95% of my lineups. Um, I'm gonna look at somebody like Garrett Wilson. He's just too cheap, and he's the clear number one for Zach Wilson. Um, you can also look Lazard's way. He gets open a lot. He's actually he's underrated. He's good. He really is. I like just Jordan Addison. Obviously, if you can afford Jefferson, play Jefferson. There's no reason not to. Um, but with like I was mentioning this game earlier, I think it's gonna be a shootout. I think it's gonna be high scoring. I think Addison is going to be great here. He should see a lot of Snead in man coverage. Um, and I think he could beat Snead. At least I personally, I personally think he will. Um, I also like DeAndre Hopkins. So I'm just reading my notes here. DeAndre Hopkins, really bad pricing. He's too cheap going up against that cold secondary. There's he shouldn't be that cheap. Also big fan. A lot. Well, I'm not a fan of this one. Everybody's talking about Rondell Robinson this week. I get it. I do get it. He gets the most targets. Uh, I just want to stay away from that chalk. I'm trying to look elsewhere. I'll look at people like Adam Thielen if Brian Branch is out, which I think he is. I'm going to jump back on the Michael Wilson train. He's been fantastic over there in Arizona. And like I said, I did like Dobbs. So I'm all over him. Cooper Cup is back. No reason not to look Cooper Cup's way and Puka's way. I think they're both going to get targets tomorrow. I think they're both going to be very interesting. Um, those are like my main receiving targets. What receivers do you like?
So my receivers, you definitely convinced me with AJ Brown. Let me tell you that, considering because he's a man coverage destroyer, which you can even tell if you watch any of the Eagles offense this year. AJ Brown eats that for breakfast, so he's a great play for sure tomorrow. Um, to continue with that, I'm looking the Texans wide receiver duo way of Nico Collins and Tank Dell. I just talked about before how the Falcons Falcons pass defense is a little overrated. Well, so if you go back to last week against the Jaguars, they did a very good job containing Ridley. I mean, he did have like 130 something yard touchdown, but other than that, he wasn't really targeted much. And I do think actually that might be the Nico Collins route. I think Terrell will see a lot of him, and Terrell is their best pass defender, I think. So therefore, if Terrell does see a lot of Nico Collins, I think Tank Dell's about to go ham tomorrow. So I think both will be good starts still. If you have to go one, definitely go Tank Dell. A couple other guys I like, Michael Pittman, even though he was a little down last week. But that means just because he had a down game last week, that means he's a little cheaper this week in DFS. So I'm all over Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson. The Titans defense is bottom 6 or 7 in the league against wide receivers. So I am on Pittman with Richardson just because show that chemistry. If we had done this a couple days ago, I tell you what, I would have said Zay Flowers, but I'm kind of leaning more off of him now only because it's trending towards OBJ returning. And if OBJ returns, he's going to take a couple targets away from Zay Flowers. So he could still be another one to consider, but I'm not as high on him now as I would have been a couple days ago. And another guy I want to throw out there, Kadarius Toney, Vikings defense worst in the entire NFL against wide receivers. I never root for Kadarius Toney because I'm a salty Giants fan like that, but I got to be honest, he's got a great matchup tomorrow. He's cheap. He's probably gonna be low owned. Hasn't really done much this year, but I think this will be his best opportunity to really take that next step. And yeah, like I said, the Vikings defense is terrible against wide receivers. So Kadarius Toney might be the play tomorrow. Of course, he still got Kelsey there. Kelsey's healthy. Taylor Swift attends, then they're gonna have to get him involved too. But uh, you know, Ken throw to Kelsey every single play. And I think the next man up would be Kadarius Toney for the Chiefs.
I like that. I do like that. I'm just gonna go over some quick little stats just to of how I'm building and how I'm looking at certain guys. I'm looking at like with a minimum of 60 routes run. I'm looking at like air yard leaders. I'm looking at AJ Brown, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, Chris Olave, Nico Collins, and DeAndre Hopkins. As you see, a lot of the guys I was already talking about fall into that list. Quarterbacks, first read, the first person the QBs look at: Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, AJ Brown, Tyreek Hill, Michael Pittman, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Those are some of the guys I'm looking at. Um, as you see, AJ Brown fell into that category again. And then targets per route run. AJ Brown again. Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Chris Olave. Now we've seen Chris Olave three times there. That's also somebody got to look at. Um, those are stats I was definitely looking at. Puka, I didn't mention him. He falls into all three of those categories as well. I don't know what's going to happen now that Cup is back, so I can't, I can't play him. Maybe like in one or two lineups, but I can't just be all over him. Um, Now I did mention Jamar Chase. Burrow has looked, he's just looked like garbage. Um, but if he has one good game, you want to be on him, so you need to keep playing Chase. T. Higgins is out tomorrow. That kind of gives a boost to Boyd, and that guy was Tyler Irvin, I think his name is. He's caught touchdowns off of Burrow in the past. That's a GPP play if you want one. Um, I'm not really on it myself. Most people will say just uh jump over to Mixon, and that's where I'm going to go right now to running backs. And yes, I do like Mixon. Um, he should hit value at least in my opinion. Great matchup against the Cardinals' 27th ranked defense against the run. He gets 80% of the team's rushing attempts. Why wouldn't you play him? All over Bijan. That kid is just a stud. You knew it coming out of college. Um, the Texans are they ranked 28th against the run, so I don't see how he's not uh absolutely in play for this. He's pricey. That's the only thing. Um, you have to look at Devin A. Chain and Mozart. They're both fantastic. Uh, Trying to decide which one, that's gonna be where the problem is. Um, yeah, that's a tough one. That really is. I think you go with the one who's lower owned, which is gonna be Mozart. A chain is coming in around almost 25%, which is a little too high for my liking. But if I'm going different elsewhere, it's not that bad. I do like Swift um coming into this week. Uh he's proven himself over there in the Eagles. He's the clear number one. Um I like him mostly for GPP. Uh he's I think he's a great pivot off of A chain if you're not gonna go to mulch route. And then of course Pacheco. Uh the Vikings run defense is kind of like in the middle, like it's kind of mid. So I think he's in a great place to really break out. Um, it's going to be tough because McKinnon does run routes in the end zone, in the red zone, so that kind of is scary. It takes away touchdown upside, but he's rough to look at. I'm on Alvin Kamara. He came back strong. David Montgomery, cash game hero this week. Gibbs is out. Low and I think Amon St. Brown is also out. Load him up. Absolutely. Um, Before I turn it over to you for running backs, I have to jump back on receivers. I completely forgot. Amon St. Brown is out, and Jamison Williams is coming back. Craziness, craziness. I don't know if I really trust Jamison Williams right off the gate. I'm gonna say maybe Raymond or Raymond, yeah, maybe Cleve Raymond or Josh Reynolds. But yeah, about running backs, all yours.
Yeah, so you definitely brought up a lot of good running back plays. Of course, Bijan's a stud, so why not? If you want to go to the Dolphins running back duo, both should be good plays tomorrow, especially because, I'm a Giants fan. This is any of you other Giants fans listening out there. We just don't have a real shot tomorrow. It's just sad to say. Obviously, crazy stuff can happen. You never know. But, obviously the Dolphins will probably be up relatively big, relatively healthy at the fourth quarter. So that means you're probably going to run the ball to chew the clock out. So I think both Moser and Akane are good plays. Of course, Moser's probably the better play just because he's lower owned. But if you're one that might not really too care, might not really mind going for a higher owned running back just because you might go lower owned than the rest of the lineup, I do think Akane has a better game tomorrow because it's slowly turning into his backfield more and more each week. But really, both either one are good plays. But my favorite running back on the slate tomorrow is Breece Hall for the New York Jets, and that's simply because the Denver Broncos defense is the worst defense in the league at stopping the run. Now, most of that probably came a couple weeks ago when they played the Dolphins, but still, they haven't looked good against the run all year long. Breece Hall is going to be great tomorrow, and that's because Robert Saleh came out this week and said that Breece Hall no longer has a restriction. He finally can get a full workload. Dalvin Cook's been struggling, so they're going to hand it off to Breece Hall more. Breece Hall 5,400 price tag in DFS. So he's definitely my go-to running back for tomorrow. And I'll tell you what, Montgomery, of course, is a good play. I actually just want to throw that in there. I know you mentioned him already, but especially since Gibbs is looking like he's going to be out. Montgomery's fresh off of a 3 touchdown game. Why not go with Montgomery? The Panthers are 20th ranked against the run. And I'll tell
Hmm.
you what, he's still questionable. I know he's also the most expensive running back on the slate. But if Saquon does play, I think Saquon will be a good start. Probably not going to be very high owned because that questionable tag might scare some people. Plus, he's also expensive. Plus, if you watched any of the Monday night game against the Seahawks the other day, you know the Giants' O line is atrocious without Andrew Thomas. Andrew Thomas has already been ruled out tomorrow, as far as I know. Same with the rookie John Michael Smith. So the Giants' O line is going to be bad tomorrow. But I still think that's not really going to affect Saquon because he's looked good against bad Giants O lines before. Now he is questionable. He might not see a full workload, but he's offense's best player. Jones struggled against a poor O line play last week against the Seahawks. So if the Giants didn't get anything going tomorrow offensively, it's going to be through Saquon Barkley. So for that reason, I'm still going to start Saquon. I'm going to take the risk. That's only if he plays. Obviously, some monitor today. You probably find out maybe an hour or so before the game. But yeah, that's just another player to keep in mind. If you're willing to pay up, if you're, get the extra salary, go Saquon. Otherwise, if not, go guys like Brees Hall and other guys we mentioned that are a lot cheaper.
That Brees Hall. Oh, I love that. That's an awesome call. I kind of forgot all about that. And hey, Jonathan Taylor's back. I'm not going to play him. He might be limited. He might not even be limited because he wasn't really injured. So that's a very interesting thing to look at. Also, Jonathan Taylor. But again, Richardson could steal touchdowns. We'll see. That one's going to be something to monitor for sure. Moving on to tight ends. Looking at targets per route run from tight ends, it's like there's a few, but like the ones I'm looking at: Travis Kelsey, Sam Laporta, Zach Ertz, and then Juno Smith. Sorry, Kyle Pitts, and of course T.J. Hawkinson. Um, Kelsey's my number one look, especially if I'm doing Mahomes builds. You could do Mahomes by himself. You could do Kelsey by himself. Put them together, I think, is a great recipe tomorrow. Especially going cash games. Kelsey's locked in there. TJ Hawkinson, again, I think it's going to be a shootout, high scoring. There's no reason not to play him. He's cheaper than Kelsey. If you're going to go a more chalky build, that's a great way to be different in the flex spot. Put a tight end, a two tight end build, Kelsey and Hawkinson. I love that. Um, Also, got to take a look at Goddard, Laporta, And I really like Higby because I'm gonna keep using tight ends against the Eagles. They're dead last against tight ends this year. That's like their one weakness. So all over Higby on that one for sure. And then defenses, the only defenses I'm even looking at is Ravens and Jets. All right, tight ends and defenses. What's up, Dante?
All right, for tight ends, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because you did mention a lot of the better ones, especially based on the stats and everything. My favorite tight end on the slate is Laporta. That's mostly because Amon-Ra St. Brown is out tomorrow. Yes, the Panthers are one of the better defenses against tight ends in the league this year. That's also because they really haven't played a guy like Laporta yet. I mean, I know they played Hawkinson last week, but that was also because the Vikings offense struggled in general. I still like Laporta. They're going to be looking his way a lot more with Amon-Ra St. Brown being, he's not officially out, but he's doubtful. So he was more than likely, unfortunately, not playing. Jameson Williams, I saw that he is actually questionable. So keep an eye on that. But even if Jameson Williams does suit up and play, I still like Laporta. But then, especially if he doesn't, that's even more reason to start Laporta, in my opinion. And another tight end, of course, Higby's going to be a good one just because the Eagles' defenses against tight ends has been atrocious all year. Zach Ertz, especially because the way that Cardinals offense, Josh Dobbs, he's looking pretty good this year. So, and he's been targeting Zach Ertz a lot. Bengals defense not very good against tight end. So, definitely, Zach Ertz not a good play. He's cheaper too. And one other tight end I just want to throw in there, just a sneaky play. Probably not a lot of people are talking about him, but it's Tyler Conklin, tight end of the New York Jets. And just because of the matchup, the Broncos aren't very good against a tight end either. The Jets obviously have a couple of other skill position players that'll come before him, like Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, Alan Lazard. But Zach Wilson does like that safety blanket every once in a while. Would not be surprised to see Conklin steal a touchdown, a couple of receptions, and especially if he gets a touchdown, he's going to hit value. So that's if you want to pay down at tight end and pay up at elsewhere to get guys like Jefferson or whatever quarterback, like somebody like Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, whatever. So that's just another player to keep in mind. And defense wise, my favorite defense on the slate tomorrow is the Detroit Lions defense. And that's because, unfortunately, I want to see Bryce Young succeed, but unfortunately, he hasn't really looked like it yet. He's been the worst rookie quarterback out of the three main rookie quarterbacks this year. The Panthers' offense in general hasn't really looked anything special. I saw that it's projected to rain maybe possibly in that game. Well, also Detroit's indoors, so never mind. They're playing in Detroit. But yeah, so either way, Lions defense I think is going to have a great game tomorrow. Lions defense has looked great all year long. They've looked great against the Chiefs. They've looked great against the Packers. They've looked great in almost all the games they played. So there's no reason why not to start the Lions defense. They really are my favorite defense in the slate.
I like that. I like that a lot. So just like a quick overview, cash games. I like Mahomes and Jalen Hurts, A. Chain, Hopkins, Kelsey, Justin Jefferson. GPPs. Um, I like sorry about that. I like Mahomes, Cousins, Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, Swift, Pacheco, AJ Brown. Those are just the way I'll be moving towards three cash games and GPPs. Like always, I know Dante loves this part when I say keep those keep those bankrolls green by playing cash games, cash games, cash games. Guys, thank you for joining. Hit that like button, follow us on Twitter, and it's time to join the rebellion.